Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Insufficient Friends. I'm tired. She's Nikki.
Hi.
And Nick, yes, I am extremely tired right now, so we'll get right into this because I am ready for bed. But if you're new here, this is a podcast where we kind of just pick a topic each week and talk about it however we want to. Insufficient Friends.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do a lot of studying. We just have fun. It's like a conversation with your friends. So if you want to join the conversation, comment because you guys don't do that enough. Please.
Yeah. And speaking of friends, we have an insufficient friend with us today.
Woohoo! Returning.
Mariah is back.
Yes.
Returning for my favorite topic.
I know. Mariah is back again today for a True Crime Part 2. I think it's Part 2 for us.
Part 2.
Yeah.
Very exciting. Thanks for having me back. Like I mentioned before we started, I'm still battling a little bit of a cold. So if you're like, she does not sound the same as last time, it's true.
Yeah.
Can confirm.
That's okay.
I mean, that's just the way it is. It seems like everybody is sick right now.
There's a lot going around.
There was, I don't know, we had a school district near here that closed. I've seen them do this before, but that closed today because they had so many kids out sick. Like 30% of the district was sick. So, you know.
I saw that there was a tuberculosis outbreak in Kansas and in Kansas City. I'm like, we're in like the 1700s apparently.
Yeah.
Because like there's always a small rate of tuberculosis. Like it's not eradicated or anything. Yeah. But to this extent that they had to do like a press release.
No, it's the largest outbreak in recorded U.S. history. So which is crazy, by the way. So. But anyway, how was your guys's? How was your week?
Mine was okay. I'm just nervous about this weekend because my dog. For anyone that knows my dog, Opie, he has a little bit of anxiety and he's borderline crazy.
Mm-hmm,
and we have to go to the vet tomorrow, and he has to get multiple vaccines, blood draw, and so he's going to be medicated out the wazoo.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Prayers for me at the vet tomorrow because it's never a fun day for either of us, for Opie either. So.
I always love the videos though of him like all like, medicated up because
on
he's
trazodone.
He's just so happy and calm and
pops a little Zanny.
Oh man. It is.
Mariah, how was your week?
We called it at work month of a week, but we all survived. I'm going to a farmer's market tomorrow, so that's very exciting. Oh. Yes. And the tuberculosis outbreak, it was one of the few times I'm happier I live in Texas than Kansas City. So I was almost going to text you about it this week too. So it's funny you brought it up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, the weekend is here. It's very exciting. Right. That's the good news.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I love a good farmer's market.
Me too.
It's so usually stuff isn't super expensive generally. Mm-hmm. I also love homemade pickles. So there's a lady that makes them up here, and I love them and buy tons of them, and I need to go back and get some more, but unfortunately I have to work in the morning, or I'd go, but you know.
Yeah.
But I do love.
You have to be careful with farmers markets nowadays though. There's one that calls itself a farmer's market down the road from Nathan here in Kansas City,
Mm-hmm.
but I swear they get their produce from Walmart because it all has barcodes. Every single thing has a barcode. I'm like, this is not a farmer's market. This is you going to Walmart and then upselling the fruit.
I don't know why you don't have a stand there. It's a good business model, you know? I mean.
So.
That's interesting.
Be careful
I have not.
The Columbia one's good.
Yeah. The Columbia one is really good. It's rated one of the top ones in the country, but but I don't. That's interesting. I didn't. I've never seen that because I haven't been to that many farmers market. I did go to the one in Kansas City that's really popular in the River Market.
Oh
one
yeah.
time,
oh, the River Market one.
Yeah, the big one.
That one's cool. But I think that means it is time for shout outs. Nick, Mariah, do you guys have any shout outs for this week? Anybody you want to shout out? Okay. We had one comment on YouTube, so thank you to Jason. Jason P, I believe, said Nice show. That was it.
Thanks.
Nice show.
You're nice.
It says nice show, period. So I don't know if that's supposed to be sarcastic or if you actually mean it. We're going to take it as you actually mean it and you like the show. Yes. So
Mariah and I chose to take that differently.
We were like, he loved it, period.
So anyway, this week our topic, folks, is true crime for the second or third time. I don't remember. We've done this a couple times, but this is true crime. This is the second time that Mariah's been on to do this. But we each picked a topic for this week, a true crime case that we're going to talk about and all kind of have fun with. And then, are we doing like a vote? Like, what are we doing? Who decide? How do we win? We got to win. Somebody's got to win something, right?
I don't know. I think we should just go by whose like theories or case sounds the most realistic, because like these are all unsolved, right?
Mine's not unsolved.
Or is it? Yours
Yeah, mine's not
okay,
unsolved.
well then I don't know. I don't know what we're gonna do. Just vote for who chose the best topic. But you guys already know my topic. But I don't
That's
know
why
yours.
we kept ours a surprise. We were trying to win. Have you met me? I'm competitive. I'm trying to win.
Listen, I don't follow directions well.
Okay, so I guess the big question is, who wants to go first?
I mean, I can go first, but
Nikki.
I will offer it to our guest.
You're good, Nikki. You're up first.
Okay.
You didn't follow directions, so I'll let you go first.
Okay. Well, let me tell you a story, because I got a good one and I was so excited for this week. It's all about Alcatraz and the infamous prison break. There were multiple like escape attempts over the years, but this was the one that was unsolved, and like it's an FBI case that's still unsolved. So I spent like hours looking through this and I was so excited. Okay. So let me tell you a little story about Alcatraz. Okay. So located on a lonely island in the middle of San Francisco Bay, Alcatraz, aka the Rock, has held captives since the Civil War. But it was in 1934, the high point of a major war on crime, that Alcatraz was refortified into the world's most secure prison. Its eventual inmates included Al Capone, who we've talked about recently, George Machine Gun Kelly, not the singer, criminals who had a history of escape, and the occasional odd character like the infamous Birdman. In the 1930s, Alcatraz was an already forbidding place surrounded by the cold, rough waters of the Pacific. Also, I'm not this good at storytelling. This is courtesy of the FBI, just in case you were wondering. This is not my original narration.
I was hooked. I was like, Nikki's amazing at writing. I don't know when she picked up the skill, but I was impressed.
I'm actually surprised that the FBI is this good at writing, truthfully.
That's true.
I know. These are good. Their case files, I honestly like reading their case files. It's very interesting. It's the same as like watching a YouTube video.
Yeah, I kind of figured the FBI's case, I've never really looked at them. I kind of figured they would just be like, here's the facts, here's what happened.
Yeah.
I think they took like a couple really popular ones and like narrated them like this.
Because I kind of figured it'd just be like reading a police report.
They're probably just trying to make themselves look good. I don't know. Probably. But so escape was near impossible from Alcatraz because they had 6 watchtowers, 20-foot barbed wire fence, and then, of course, the freezing San Francisco Bay. So despite those odds, from 1934 until the prison was closed in 1963, it was only operating a short span of time, which surprised me as like a federal prison. But before that, it was like a military prison and base. So in those short years, 36 men tried 14 separate escapes. Nearly all were caught or were confirmed dead. Like they didn't survive the attempt in the water. However, 3 particular inmates, they remain a mystery to this day. So here's their story. So the escapees. So Frank Morris arrived at Alcatraz in January 1960 after convictions for bank robbery, burglary, and other crimes, and repeated attempts to escape various prisons. Later that year, a convict by the name of John Anglin was sent to Alcatraz, followed by his brother Clarence in early 1961. All three of these men knew each other from previous stints in prison. Side note, John and Clarence Anglin, same last name, they're brothers. They had tried to escape Leavenworth in Kansas.
Oh.
Yeah, and so they were both sent to Alcatraz. Frank Morris had tried to escape, I believe, a Florida prison.
Okay.
And he actually succeeded once, but then was captured later by police. So he was also sent to Alcatraz. So those three knew each other. But then Morris was assigned next to a cell of Alan West, who was already an inmate at Alcatraz. And Alan West also had multiple escape attempts in the past. So we got the four guys: Frank Morris, John Anglin, Clarence Anglin, and Alan West. So on June 12th, 1962, early morning bed check turned out to be anything but normal. They did 7 a.m. roll call. The guards went around, did their normal count for the morning. 3 convicts were not in their cells. So John and his brother Clarence and Frank. So Alan West was in his cell. He did not make it in time for the escape attempt. So he was still in a cell. So he was part of the overall plan, but was there for count because he never made it out. So in the 3 prison beds of Frank Morris and the brothers, there were dummy heads made of paper mache and real human hair. So Clarence worked in the barber shop. So he stole hair and other things from the barbershop, and they made like eyebrows and hair. These paper mache dolls are ugly, but effective, I guess. Like they look pretty realistic, but they're very ugly. Anyways, they like kind of tucked him into the top of the bed and then like stuffed the bed so it looked like a person was laying there overnight, because they did hourly checks just like walking by.
Oh, gotcha.
But I guess it was enough to like distract them.
Somebody's sleeping, they're not going to move. You're going to be covered up. Yeah, they're just not going to notice.
Yeah, exactly. So as soon as the men were discovered gone, it was like within an hour that the local FBI was notified. So they immediately started, gathering clues, started a search. So in the clues gathering phase, so first they checked like all previous records of the previous attempts, tried to find different strategies there. Didn't really turn up with anything because every single escape attempt was different. They also interviewed relatives and things, but none of the like paperwork side of things really turned up with anything. But within 2 days, a packet of letters sealed in rubber. So one of the men had been reading a mechanic magazine and had learned how to make like rubber waterproof like glue almost. So there was a sealed packet of letters and the same rubber that they ended up finding on the escape raft and life jackets. So they made like this homemade rubber glue that was waterproof. So this guy had taken like photographs and things with him, and it was in that same glue, but I guess that fell off or got left behind. So they found that. And they confirmed the photographs and everything with family members. So it was one of the Anglins. So that's how they figured out that they might have made it off the island, unless they had died in the water and this floated up. But that was kind of their first clue. Then they discovered a homemade paddle. So they had made paddles out of plywood, like from the workshop in the prison, just like random pieces of wood, with the same glue. And they also found a homemade life vest on a near beach. So it wasn't like the San Francisco Bay or Angel Island, which I'll talk about in a second. It was like a totally different beach. But that was the only initial items they found. So they were trying to, through all this, trying to figure out also how they did it, how they got out. So here's what they did. The concrete at Alcatraz, because of the salty, ocean air, the concrete was like something in that formula was like deteriorating. So you could chip away at the concrete super easily. It just crumbled. So they chipped away at the air vents in their cells. And their cells kind of backed up to like a maintenance corridor. So they chipped away at this to get into the air vents and make them wider, make like the concrete wide enough to go through. But to cover up, they did this like every night. There was like a happy hour every day from 5 to 6, and then they also worked out at night using the paper mache dummy heads. Um, and because like once they got through the initial part, they would put the paper mache dummy head in the bed and then crawl through the tunnel to keep chipping away throughout the whole entire prison to make a tunnel. So they did that at various times throughout the day to cover up, like when they were working inside the farther down the tunnels, they used the same paper mache, painted it green from the workshop, and like put like a fake vent over top. So the guards walking by would just think they were sleeping and not working on it, but really they were like inside these tunnels just chipping away. And the guards never knew. So once they found that, they had a good idea. So they ended up making a tunnel far enough to get to like a maintenance quarter that had pipes that kind of formed a ladder to the roof. So they were able to get off the roof and then shimmy down a drain pipe. Like it was like Grease, like the movie where they shimmied down the drain pipe to escape the house. Like they literally did the same thing. So that's how they got to the roof, got outside, and then all they had to do was climb the fence to get to the shoreline. And so they had already stored the rafts and life jackets on the roof. And so they were able to make it past the guards and get to the shoreline. And they know that they made it to the shoreline because they had bloodhounds track the scent and there were footprints to the shoreline too. So the bloodhounds stopped at the water. So they kind of figured out how they did it. And they found different, clues as to, confirming that they at least got to the water. They couldn't tell for sure if they made it to the island or not. But the guy that got left behind, poor Alan West, not really poor because he's like a really bad guy, but he got left behind. He literally, in his testimony to the FBI, said, I made it up to the roof, but I was too late and I was sad because I got left behind. So he was like standing on the roof. There were supposed to be like the guys there waiting for him, the raft, and he ended up having to go back through the tunnel into his cell and woke up the next morning. But the guards knew he was part of it because he had a paper mache head in his room with him. So
imagine the guards, you're like, you also have a head? Like, what is happening? Yeah.
And he's just like, I didn't make it. So they interrogated him super hard. And he apparently gave up pretty easily because he was so pissed that he didn't make it with the others. He was like, whatever, I'm ratting them out.
Yeah.
So he told FBI that their plan was to not swim to San Francisco Bay. That was a mile away, but to raft 2 miles north to be a little bit more inconspicuous. There was an island. And on that island were some fishing boats and things where they could steal a boat and then get to the mainland to kind of divert off of what you would normally think is like a path to get to San Francisco. And then he said from there, their plan was to steal a car and then drive to South America. So
all the way to South America.
Yes. And I think they did it. So I'll tell you why in a little bit, but that was basically what he told the FBI was the plan. So there's a couple theories. Promise I'm almost done talking. This is the theories. So theory one is obviously they died in the water but their bodies were never found because there was an extensive search, but it's the ocean. I mean, you can only do so much.
Yeah.
So there were a couple of things that supported this and a couple of things that didn't. So one supporter of this fact was there was a Canadian sailor that was making a trip down to the US and back to Canada. He reported a dead body floating. He said what looked like a dead body in prison pants, like prison issue pants, floating in the water. But he didn't report this until like a month later because he said he had no radio. But like this is...
You didn't get to the shore for a month?
Yeah, so he said he went back up to Canada, didn't report it in Canada, but came back down to the US and then reported it. Which seems odd to me. Like this was in the 60s, so surely you have a radio. I don't know.
There was
or
TVs,
maybe
I think.
Yeah, maybe I'm overestimating the 60s. I don't know. I don't know.
Yes, there was TVs, telephones in the 60s, guys.
But maybe they weren't were they widely accessible on boats? I don't know.
Oh, I'm sure there was. I don't know if radios would have been widely accessible on boats at that time. That's a good question.
Apparently not this guy's.
As far as once he got to shore, my question more is once he got to shore, why didn't he say something? because he's
Exactly.
not
When
going to
he
be.
got to Canada, why didn't he say,
He's
I
not.
think I saw a dead body
Yeah,
floating in the ocean?
he's
I
not going to be
would.
out at sea the entire month.
Yeah. So he reported it like a month later, which is sus, but I mean, he did say he saw a dead body. But then the things that go against that theory, though, was so at the time they were like, it's impossible to do this swim. The water's freezing cold. You can't swim a mile. You're never going to make it. But tons of people have done that swim. I mean, in the 2 miles too. So,
I think
you know,
isn't there actually like
there's
a
lit
swim that you can do, like a yearly
yes,
thing, like a yearly
Yes.
event?
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's also like polar plunges and things. I know that's not full swimming, but also like there was an elementary school group that took rafts out. And so like clearly you can make it if an elementary
Mhm.
school kid can make it.
The
So yeah, the
MythBusters
water's
tested
cold at night, but yeah, and Mythbusters too. That was gonna be my
MythBusters
next
did it
one.
like
Yeah.
with the raincoats and with
Yeah,
the
Yeah.
raincoat raft and everything, and they
like
made it.
perfectly recreated
Yeah,
it.
and they
Yeah.
made it.
So
So
it's definitely possible. So
Mhm.
why the FBI said it's not possible to save their own skin, I don't know.
probably,
So
yeah,
like
that's
I
probably
don't
it.
really buy that. Like if they were reading mechanics magazines to figure out the glue in the life jackets, and these are men who, frankly, Morris had a normal and average IQ and had escaped prison like 3 times, other prisons. That's why was sent to Alcatraz. So like he could definitely do it. So that was theory number one, though, was that they never made it. They died
Mhm.
in the water. Theory two, and this one has kind of two subsects from it, but this one says they made it to Angel Island, which was the island 2 miles north,
Mhm.
and then escaped from there. Like stole a boat and then got to mainland and stole a car. But from there, there's different theories of where they went because once this hit the public news, people were like, "Oh, I saw him in Canada. I saw him in Europe. I saw him, all over."
Hmm.
But the most popular one was that they stole a car once they got to Angel Island, stole a boat and made it to the mainland. They stole a car on the mainland and drove through Mexico down through to South America. Um, the supporting evidence for this is that there was a photo eventually sent to a newspaper and oh
Sorry,
honey.
she started whining. I have to
She's so cute.
readjust. She was upset.
She's like, stop talking. I'm
I
done
know.
with this one.
Oh, she's looking
But
at you.
there was a photo of the two brothers sent to a newspaper in like the 80s or 90s, supposedly taken by Frank Morris, which was the third guy, the escaped convict.
Hmm.
At the time, they didn't know because in this picture, the guy, and I can post this on Instagram. In the picture that was sent to the newspaper, both of the brothers had like sunglasses on, like full facial hair, like were very well like disguised.
Mhm.
But later on in the 2000s, actually, I think it was like 2020 or 2019, there was AI software that confirmed it was them based on
Oh,
historical
wow.
photographs in running this new one. So
Interesting.
that was very interesting. And that photo was taken in Brazil. So that was one of the things that leads me to think this might be what actually happened. Another one was there was a police officer that spotted a white boat going under the Golden Gate Bridge, but FBI dismissed this, just saying it's a boat. But later on, a fisherman, so again, this is one of those things where all these things happen later. So I don't think we'll ever really know, but it's
Yeah.
very interesting. Um, this fisherman on his deathbed in San Francisco said he was the one driving that white boat and he had helped convicts escape. He said he saw people floating in the water, thought they were just, struggling, didn't know they were convicts. Um, so that was another one,
Hmm.
and that was like a deathbed confession. Also, a different bank robber, totally irrelevant to the rest of the story, but a different bank robber in the 90s said that Clarence had an ex-girlfriend help them steal the car and get to South America. There were records of Clarence buying like teach yourself Spanish books and things in prison, but like it's prison, they have a lot of books in
Yeah.
their library, even
Mhm.
Alcatraz. Um, so there's that. But this is the one that gets me. So on in Morin County, which when you go from Angel Island and you steal a boat and go to the mainland, you land in Morin County.
Just when every time you steal a boat, you're gonna end up in this county.
Every
Yep,
time
got
you
it.
steer a boat, you in this county. So this is the last piece of evidence as to why I think it was this one. There are police records in Warren County that say the day after this, a blue 1955 Chevy was stolen, and it was reported seen with 3 men inside. And then later, a little bit inwards, in Stockton, California, a man reported to the police that he was forced off the road by a blue Chevy driven by 3 men. And then this blue Chevy was spotted throughout. So that was kind of the last piece of evidence that makes me, in my brain that thinks everything is like a movie, basically. I think this is what happened is they stole the car and then drove down, ended up in Brazil, lived their life there. There was also like roses sent to both the Anglin brothers' mom every year on her birthday until she died. At her funeral, family members say that there were weird people in the back dressed as women in like long black veils. And then there was also a letter sent to a news station that was supposedly from John Anglin and said, my brother Clarence died in 2005. Frank Morris, the other escapee, died in 2008. I have cancer and I need treatment. So if I turn myself into a prison, will you treat me for cancer? But the FBI was never able to confirm the fingerprints pulled from this and everything. So it's rumored that they all just passed away in South America.
By the way, 2005 and 2008 is not that long ago.
Yeah,
I know.
That's crazy.
I mean, if they did live and survive and live that long, that's pretty flipping good because that's not that long ago.
Yeah. So it's so fascinating, and people put out like some wild theories, but this one, it is wild to think that they went to Brazil and lived there for the rest of their lives. But there are several pieces, more evidence than, they died in the water, in my opinion. So yeah, it's very interesting, but it's still technically, even though they have AI confirmation that photo was a very high match to them, it's still technically unsolved.
Yeah.
Unsolved, yeah.
Because they don't have, AI is still it's not a confirmation of anything. It's just guessing,
Yeah.
So. But anyway.
So that was the Alcatraz prison break.
Yeah. Alcatraz prison break. Probably, most famous prison break of all time. Probably one of the most famous prisons of all time. So,
Yeah.
But
which is wild because it only operated for 30 years.
Yeah. I knew it wasn't very long, but because it didn't. I knew it wasn't super long because it wasn't, like you said, a lot of people tried to escape. And if they had made comments when it was built and when it was operating that if anybody ever escaped, it would be shut down. And
it was shut down due to budget cuts.
Yeah. I do think it wasn't shut down right
a couple
after.
years.
Yeah.
It was like 3 years after, and they said that the amount that it would take to repair the concrete and everything was going to be way more than it cost. So I think that genuinely was true.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that everything else didn't help.
Yeah.
Well, and it also
track record's not great.
It also takes a long time to get like the population moved to other places. Like when the prison in Jeff City closed, I think it took them like a decade to get all the prisoners moved to different locations. Like they announced it was going to close, and then it took a long time to get them figured out where they were going to move them all, and then it closed. So it's wouldn't be surprising that they started the process right after they escaped, and then it was done 2 years later. Yeah. But
have you been to Alcatraz, Mariah? I know Kev hasn't.
I have not. I know you went back in the day, but I have not been to Alcatraz. It's on the list though. Definitely needs to happen.
Cool.
Yeah, it'd be fun to go see.
Cool.
It would be cool to go see. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, next, Mariah, do you want to go or do you want to go last?
I will go next.
You will go next.
Okay. I was gonna say though, good job, Nikki, but I did enjoy that you still managed to get a Grease reference in there with me on the episode. It's one of the
5 movies I've seen.
I know, but it's one of the 5 movies we saw every time we had a sleepover in elementary school. So
basically.
See,
I enjoyed that Grease snuck in.
I like that you snuck in Grease because I wasn't expecting that.
I know.
The one I thought would have been Shawshank Redemption, but
I haven't seen it.
I didn't figure you would ever. Really? Are both of you this bad at movie? Really?
Yeah.
Mariah just said when we had sleepovers growing up, you know what we did? We played Barbie horses and watched Grease.
Every time.
Okay. I mean,
and had tater tots and tacos usually.
Yeah.
Every time.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
We'll make up for it with our true crime knowledge, though, of our lack of movie knowledge.
Okay.
So
If you say so.
Well, I will attempt to with my case. So okay, perfect. So have you guys ever watched The Truth About Pam? This is a 6-episode series that came out in 2022, and I can't remember what the original, I think it was an NBC show, but I don't know if it like came out on like Hulu or what, but I don't think it was aired on like a weekly TV, more like a streaming service release.
Okay.
I was just watching it before this to refresh myself on the show versus the case, right? But I'm going to try to make sure I don't integrate a little bit of fiction with the story.
Well, that's okay because we're insufficient and I do it all the time.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Good. Perfect. I'll be on track then.
It's in the title.
So this is I wouldn't say the case. I'm not going to say
Nope.
I think your audio fried.
I think you're gone. Yep. Hold on. Oh. Did something unplug? I cannot hear a word. I heard a loud buzz and then you weren't there anymore.
Oh, you're back.
There you are. Okay. There you go.
It asked me if I was playing music, and it got like really concerned that I needed to change my audio settings.
I thought you got struck by lightning.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what happened.
It was like boom.
That was crazy. So
okay, we can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. So this is the case of about Pam Hump. She was so this is in Troy, Missouri, which is just outside of St. Louis. So you guys will enjoy the local aspect, and I'm sure you're both going to want to go watch the show after. So so this all takes place between like 2011 and like 2013 time frame.
I know this case.
So if you see what she was originally charged for, there was a shooting that happened at her house let me figure out what that, Louis Gumberger. So he was a resident of Union, Missouri, which is kind of over there near Troy, Missouri. And they kind of became friends through various situations. He actually, unfortunately, had developed mental and physical disabilities after a car crash that he was a part of. So as I kind of go through the story, Pam really liked to attach herself to people that terminally ill cancer, people in need that she was kind of able to unfortunately swindle, either through fundraising efforts or just kind of getting herself attached to I don't want to spoil the next part of it. So anyways, she managed to kind of swindle people's families and, fundraisers and such. So there was no denying that she shot this man. They originally ruled it as an accident. And then kind of as they went through the investigation, they realized, hey, this probably wasn't an accident, right? That was a pretty open and shut case. So I'm not going to go into that part as much. But the bigger story and kind of where the TV shows are around and such is the murder of her friend Betsy. So Betsy was murdered in 2011, and I think Louis was murdered in maybe 2016, so I was maybe a little off at the beginning. But Betsy was like Pam's best friend in Troy, Missouri. And there was Pam was terminally ill with cancer and had been for a while. She had 2 daughters, and she was not married to their father, but she'd been married to Russ for 12 years. So one night, Pam basically takes Betsy home, and Russ is at a friend's house doing like a game night, right? So she kind of offers to take Betsy home because she wasn't feeling super good after like treatment and such. Drops her off, and later when Russ comes home, he finds Betsy dead on the floor, with a knife sticking out of her neck and her arms cut. And
Goodness.
and there's this really dramatic phone call, obviously, because he just found his wife dead on the floor. He's very distraught, and he calls the police and says, "Hey, I think she's committed suicide." Because what other reasonable explanation would you think of your terminally ill, like cancer-stricken wife, right? Because who would ever suspect anything else? So police show up, and they immediately have suspicions that it is not a suicide due to the graphic nature of the scene that they show up upon, right? So they take him in for questioning. They remove his coat. They kind of, take all his items away. But what they find suspicious is there's not really any blood on his clothes, right? That would indicate, he had stabbed his wife, essentially. So they kind of go and they try to investigate all the bathrooms, blah, 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 blah. Well, they take him in for questioning, and they don't formally arrest him till the next day. And his family kind of can't believe he did this. I mean, they weren't in a great marriage, etc. But no one really assumed that Russ was involved. So they go through a whole trial, etc. It's a 2-year process before he gets convicted. And Russ is eventually convicted for the murder of his wife, even though he, adamantly is saying he's innocent through the whole time. I guess one thing I forgot to mention, I think there's like over 50 stab wounds on her. So that's why they couldn't believe he thought she'd committed suicide. And they kind of during the trial, they really analyzed this call and basically said he was playing it up and et cetera, et cetera. But, later, as they find out, it was just a true reaction to seeing something kind of that,
horrific,
taken back. Yeah, horrific. Yeah. So, they go through the whole trial, et cetera, et cetera. Well, one thing that kind of comes up a lot is that Pam is super involved with saying that, Russ and Betsy weren't having a good marriage. There were some stories that she came up with that basically said that Russ at one point had put a pillow over Betsy and was saying, like, this is what it would be like if you die, et cetera, et cetera. Just like crazy stories that she was coming up with, saying that Betsy didn't tell her family because, no one like wants to think that way of someone else, especially because she was dying and she just wanted to kind of keep everything together. The interesting aspect, though, is that Pam, is kind of the last person to see her alive. During all the trials, it comes up that Pam was the sole beneficiary of a $150,000 life insurance policy on Betsy. Which is very odd, right? Like, who takes out a life insurance policy and puts their best friend when they have a husband and kids? And it's not like a shared, like, it's not like she's one of 5 people on it. She is the sole beneficiary. And so that basically ends up coming up once Pam has murdered the Lewis man that happened in 2016. As they kind of go through the investigation of that, they start to realize that there's a lot of mismatch in her stories on Lewis, that then as the investigators kind of go back and look at the Betsy case, they realized that a lot of the testimonies and police, what are they called? Just when they take
interrogations.
Yeah. Interrogations. They don't match up to the timelines. They don't match up to the crime scenes. They don't match up to et cetera, right? Because Pam was basically really good at manipulating people, and she even managed to manipulate the police through these investigations. So in 2021, they finally charged Pam with the murder of Betsy.
That's recent.
Yes, this is all very recent. So she was already convicted for the murder of Lewis. She was already serving her time, and they were able to get Russ out, because there was evidence that was withheld from the jury that probably would have made him not be convicted in the first place. That would have pointed more towards Pam. that the investigators were withholding because she'd basically managed to manipulate them into thinking she hadn't done anything wrong, right? So she is charged in 2001. She is at that time currently serving her time for the murder of Lewis in Chillicothe, Missouri, at the same prison that Gypsy Rose is at the same time. So, Chillicothe, Missouri has a few famous TV killers at the same time, which is kind of crazy for little Chillicothe, Missouri, right? And so Pam enters a not guilty plea. And this is during the COVID days, though, so it's really getting dragged out. They don't have a preliminary hearing until 2022, and they kind of refine charges, etc. And she entered a true non-guilty plea in March 2024 to this crime. And in September 2024, sorry, I'm reading my Wikipedia notes, they are doing a DNA evidence to be reviewed. The trial is now set for August 2026 in St. Charles. So,
wow.
Betsy was murdered in 2011, and then Russ got out sometime in like 2016, 2017, but they aren't going to be able to have the actual trial for Betsy's murder until 2026.
That's wild. At least they were able to get Russ out first, and it's not like they had to wait for a separate guilty verdict to then release him.
Yes.
Interesting.
Well, obviously I work in the news. We've talked about this. So I've seen this case a lot because it's been a big thing.
I haven't seen it.
Anytime you have somebody that's stabbed 50 times, it's not a, it's a pretty big thing.
Not an everyday occurrence.
Yeah, it's not an everyday
You know
occurrence.
What gets me about, so you mentioned Chillicothe. Kevin and I had talked last week about how one of the mob bosses was sent down to Springfield, and there's a lot of people sent to Leavenworth. Like, I guess Missouri and Kansas is just like the prisons. There's so many like famous people that get sent here.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Leavenworth
That's probably not the reason.
Pretty infamous prison, I think. Leavenworth.
Yes.
Like I hear of Leavenworth a lot. I used to. Is it still a military? It used to be a military prison. It still is, isn't it? Or part of it is anyway.
Yeah, it's a federal and like a military prison. That's why it gets a lot of attention.
Yeah. Yep. Because if you're bad in the military, you do something wrong in the military. The worst, it's always a threat. We're going to send you to Leavenworth. Like that's like the threat. That's the worst place you can go. So that's where you're going to go. But okay.
All I know is that the warden on Orange is the New Black, when he gets fired in like season 6 or something, spoiler alert, I guess. They threaten him with sending him to Leavenworth, sending him to Kansas, and he's like, nothing is worse than effing Kansas.
We agree, we're Missouri people.
Exactly. We're on the good side.
But to wrap this up, there was a third incident that she maybe could be tied to that was also originally ruled accidental, that now they have it as undetermined, but there's probably never going to be legal action. So in like the 2013 timeframe, her mother, Shirley, she was basically the sole caretaker for her. And one night she dropped her off at her apartment and told her nursing staff and like her caretakers not to go check on her till like 2 p.m. or 4 p.m. the next day. And she fell off her balcony, supposedly her second story balcony, and people found her the next morning, on the ground. Yeah. And they ruled it as accidental, and they basically said the balcony just gave way, et cetera, et cetera. But it has been now undetermined, but there's never going to be enough evidence to prove that it wasn't a fall, because she had dementia and a few other things that she truly could have just ended up on her balcony. Yeah. But it was just another interesting circumstance within all kind of the same time frame. So we'll have to catch back up with an episode in 2026 to conclude how the case ended. So
Yeah.
Man, you've got a lot.
And-
You've got a lot of trust in this podcast that it'll still be going on in 2026. I mean, I hope it is because I enjoy doing this, but that's a lot of trust in this podcast.
It's already February 2025. I mean,
This
we only
is-
have to make it like
This is true.
it'll be here before you know it.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true. We've already been going for 2 years, which is pretty.
We're gonna have to
pretty
get
damn
some
good,
more
so.
friends
Yeah.
to put in our rotation here. We only have 4 friends. Just kidding.
Well, avoid Chillicothe because I don't think you want to be friends with people in over there. So
Yeah.
Well, just the ones
Not
that are sent to
really.
prison there.
yeah,
Like, you know.
Oh yeah, we should clarify. We're not trashing.
Yeah.
Chillicothe.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry,
it's
sorry.
not it's not actually Chillicothe because none of these people are actually from Chillicothe. It's
No,
just
no.
it's the
Yeah.
prison that you don't want to deal with. Yeah.
Yes.
So
So the show's on
That's
Peacock right
interesting.
now. If
okay.
you want to watch it, 6 episodes.
What's
Nice.
it called?
The Truth About Pam.
Okay.
Hmm.
Go add it to my
And Renee
list.
Zell. Oh, I'm really bad at names.
Renee Zellweger.
So yes,
Mhm.
she plays Pam.
Oh, okay. That's a pretty big get for that.
Interesting.
That's
Yes, it's a big name for
Yeah.
the show. So
okay.
I'm gonna go watch it
Cool.
after.
Yeah.
So do we think they'll is it set to renew? Like is it going to keep going? Is it
No,
done?
It was a mini series.
Okay.
For yep, a
So-
limited mini series.
So do
Oh,
we
okay.
think they'll finish like do one episode whenever it's all done and wrap it up, or do we? I mean,
I hope.
I always
so.
wonder how you do that because if you have a miniseries that ends with something that's still going on, especially when it's like a
Mhm.
crime thing, like, do you come back and do one episode and add it on to make it like
Or do like
wrap
a
up the whole
second
thing?
second season of the miniseries or
Yeah.
documentary. Mhm.
Well, the crazier part was the miniseries aired in 2022, and if you remember, she wasn't really charged officially till like 2021.
Yeah.
So they cranked that
Mm.
miniseries out like
Fast.
immediately.
I feel like they do that a lot nowadays. Like,
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like all the time I see a case and then it's like, oh, they're already have like this is already a thing. It's like, really? That quickly?
Yeah.
Really? Okay. Sure. Like,
Mhm.
you know, I don't know. I think
Yeah,
yeah. I
but
don't
there's
know.
been a lot of that with recent court cases. Am I allowed to say his name? The rapper, right?
Oh,
Am I allowed to say Diddy? I don't know if I'm allowed to say Diddy. Are you allowed to say that?
I mean, why wouldn't you be able
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
I think
like
you're okay.
Voldemort.
Oh, okay. to? Well, you just said that
No.
too, so that doesn't
yeah,
mean
But-
you,
I
that
don't
was
know.
worse, Nikki. No,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
But they
bad.
cranked out those. There was like 5
Yeah.
documentaries, like instantly. I feel like on Hulu and Netflix, and
Hmm.
now I think there was one on Peacock. And yeah, it's like any major event like that, they're really cranking it out.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. I think that means that it is my turn.
Yes.
Okay.
Turn.
My case is about. I'm going to probably butcher this name because it's German. Walburga Osterich. Something like that. Not sure.
Sounds good.
She was born in 1880. She had a nickname of Dolly. We're going to call her Dolly. So born in 1880. It's unclear if she was born in Germany or or right after her parents immigrated to the United States, but she's of German parents. So anyway, at the age of 12, she started working in a textile mill in Minneapolis with Fred, who ended up becoming her husband when she turned 17. They got married. So she was a little promiscuous, though. She was known to have many lovers after their marriage.
Dolly.
Yeah. So she was known to have many lovers after their marriage. And in 1933, she introduced Otto Sandhuber.
These names
Sandhuber?
are real easy.
Otto Sandhuber. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it or not. He was a 17-year-old working at this mill as well, at this textile factory with Fred. So she invited him to her home, which started another affair. But she
We need like big
apparently-
red letters that says like illegal.
Yeah. So this was in 1930 30, I think
Yeah,
13.
that's
So
true.
Yeah.
So things are a little bit different. But so she invited him into the home, which started an affair. But apparently, I don't know if she just really liked this 17-year-old more than her other affairs. She ended up, well, she would tell the neighbors that he was her homeless half brother. And that's so to kind of keep the suspicion away from the fact that he was around the house all the time. And eventually, it got to the point where he was around so much that she had him move into their attic. So the only way to access their attic was through a hatch in their bedroom closet in the ceiling. And he moved up there. She gave him like a cot, food, lamps, and book, and a book and some writing materials. And he would write. During the day he would do housework around the house, and at night he had to be extremely quiet so her husband wouldn't find out. But he would write. He would write like screenplays for movies or short stories.
Oh, wow.
Which she would mail off to publishers to try to get them published. So you've got that going on. He would later describe himself as a sex slave and said they made love up to 8 times a day.
Holy
Jesus
smokes.
Christ.
What did he have time to write?
I don't have a flippin' clue, by the way. So, and it gets crazier. In 1918, the family moved from Minneapolis to Los Angeles. She only agreed to move if she could pick the house, and guess what? She picked a house with an attic so that he could move with her. He actually he moved before them so that he was already in the attic when they moved in the house.
Wow.
So
naturally.
Anyway, so you've got this dude living in an attic now for years, which is crazy. So that was in 1918, I said. When did they first meet? 1913. So you've already gone 5 years at this point. Okay. So
that's crazy.
He's still living in the attic. In 1922, Dolly and her husband. So this is now 9 years later that he's living in this attic, which is flipping crazy. So in 1922, he overhears Dolly and her husband having an argument, and he fears for her safety. So he goes down out of the attic. This is the first time he's ever done this. He goes down, or that it, the story is. Goes down out of the attic. He gets 2 revolvers, gets into a fight with her husband, and shoots and kills him. They decide to stage it as a robbery. They tie her up and put her in like a closet and lock it. And to make it look like it's a robbery. And it was just a robbery gone wrong, and he was shot during a robbery. Botched robbery. So, after the murder, dude continues to live in the attic for another 8 years. So we're now up to
wow.
What is this? We
17?
were at 9, so we're at, what are we at?
Yeah.
27 now? 27 years, which is crazy. That he's been living in her attic. She did let him have a typewriter though, because there wasn't anybody hear the noise now, so she let him have a typewriter.
Wait. The husband's been murdered.
Husband's been murdered.
Yeah.
So
but
8
he's
years
still living in the attic.
Yep, 8 years he's still living in the attic.
Okay, just checking.
At this point, it's a personal choice.
Yeah.
Like he wants to be in the attic at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure I'm on track.
Now you get the problem of now 40-something, 50-something year old woman is still promiscuous, and she gets accused of her husband's murder. And there's this whole, like, eventually she gets accused because she's having an affair with her lawyer.
Oh my God.
And she gives him a watch that she said was stolen during the robbery.
Oh no.
How dumb.
And she plays it off.
be?
She plays it off that she found it later, like it was in the yard. They just dropped it and she found it later. Okay. Then
Reasonable.
Then one of her other lovers came out and said that not shortly after the murder, she gave him a gun to hide. or to get rid of. She wanted
Why
him.
would you not just hide all this in the attic with the dude?
She wanted him to dispose of it in the La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles.
Okay.
A neighbor also said that he was given a pistol as well to get rid of, and he buried it in the road.
Was she having an affair with this neighbor too? Why else would you bury a gun someone gave you?
I don't know, but anyway,
I mean, it has to be. No one is
Yeah.
going to go up to their neighbor that you may have interacted with a couple times, like, not can I have a cup of sugar, but hey, can you bury this gun? Yeah, sure, no problem.
Exactly.
No problem. She had to have been having an affair with him.
So anyway, at this point, she's arrested on suspicion of murder. So while she's in jail, she tells her lawyer that she goes back to the story of her homeless half-brother is living in the attic. She tells her lawyer that her homeless half-brother is living in their attic and wants him to go check on his well-being. And when they find him, Otto, who's still in the attic, he tells them the entire story of their relationship and what happened. He confesses to all of it, and everything. And they end up finding the weapons. They figure out where they are. They find the weapons. And he is convicted of manslaughter, but released because the statute of limitations is up.
Oh.
So
he spent too much time in the attic.
Or I guess he spent the perfect amount of time in the attic, if you want to look at
it.
He played the long game by living in the attic.
He played the long game by living in the attic.
He knew what he was doing.
Yeah, he's like, I'm going to stay in this attic.
Yeah, so he changed his name, moved to Canada, and married another woman. So there you go. He eventually moved back to Los Angeles.
He married after that.
He eventually moved back to Los Angeles and lived his life just kind of around.
How do you describe your new spouse? Hey, I lived in an attic for like 30 years.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, did he live in the attic with the new spouse?
No, he did not. So.
It's so bad. Poor kid was like traumatized.
I was going to say,
the Stockholm Syndrome. We're making fun of it.
Yeah.
But.
Oh my! But at some point, it was his choice, I guess, unless he truly had Stockholm syndrome. Because 8 years is a long time to stay in the attic just for funsies.
And that's after this whole thing happened. Like not even counting the time that he spent before in the attic, before the husband died. So she went to trial for murder. It ended in a hung jury. And in 1936, her charges were dropped. So she got away scot-free too. She lived in Los Angeles for the rest of her life. She died in 1961 at the age of 80.
Wow. That's wild.
The story's been turned into several, or 2 made-for-TV movies. One of them starred Neil Patrick Harris, and in a full-length feature film called The Bliss of Mrs. Blossom. It also was investigative discovery show. On a series called A Crime to Remember. So it's been in a couple different things, but yeah, there you go.
Wow.
Interesting.
Austeric? I don't know. Anyway. Yeah, Dolly.
I like Kevin's story the best about Dolly, because I just wasn't expecting it at all.
That was the one that every time you said something, I was like, what?
Yes.
I thought that was an interesting. I think that's an interesting story myself, so that's why I decided to go with that one for this week. I think
it's good.
Wild. It's a wild ride of a story.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah,
crazy.
Anyway, that was fun.
That was fun.
That was a lot of fun. I think though now it is time for facts. Okay. Nick, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first this time?
You can go first.
I can go first? Okay. I have a few. It's kind of a series of fun facts, but they all have to do with serial killers, and I thought it was interesting. So I found this story on CNN that was a list of fast facts, is what it said, on American serial killers. So the FBI defines serial killers as 2 or more killings separated by a span of time. so it's different than like a mass murder because that's all at once or whatever. But a serial killer, that is also kind of a like a contentious term. People have different arguments over what the actual terms are, because it used to also say at different locations, but they've changed that because some serial killers take their victims back to the same place and do the same murders. So there's a bunch of different stuff on that. But the FBI says they are relatively rare. Only 1% of homicides each year are committed by serial killers. So it's not a lot, but there's still
enough.
There's still enough. So I pulled a couple of the most famous ones. So probably the most famous unsolved one would be the Zodiac Killer. Everybody's heard of the Zodiac Killer. Victims, there's at least 5 victims, which I figured there would have been more. And California in the 1960s. Okay, all those happened pretty much in the 1960s in California. The two probably most famous, I would say, besides Jack the Ripper, which is like an old one, but the two most famous Americans would be Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer, I would argue. Ted Bundy is confessed to more than 2 dozen, but he may have been, have done more. And that was in the 1970s in several states. And then Dahmer was confirmed to have 16 victims. He confessed to 17, but prosecutors could never find it. Could never find a link to the last one or charge him for the last one. And that was from the 1970s to 1990s. Now, this one I had never heard of, the last one, which is why I pulled it, because I never heard of it, and it's kind of crazy. Samuel Little. Have you guys ever heard of Samuel Little?
No.
Yes.
You have? Okay. So Samuel Little was a serial killer reportedly from the 1970s to 2005. So that's 35 years that he was an active serial killer in, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 different states.
Wow.
That he was active in. He's been convicted of 8 murders, but in 2018 he confessed to a total of 93.
Wow.
Which
I remember seeing that.
I had never, I think of Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer as like, okay, that's a lot of people. Like 16, 15, 16, whatever. I figured the Zodiac Killer was higher at 5.
Yeah.
93 is a lot. Like, that's a lot of killing people. And I mean, 35 years is also a long time to be an active serial killer, but 93 people over 35 years, that's an average of like almost 3 people a year.
That's a lot to never get caught, even in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I mean, they still had, especially in the 90s and early 2000s, they had technology.
Yeah. So
not what we have today, but
that is kind of crazy. We may have to do another serial killer episode and talk about some of these people too.
Yeah.
I was going to say, now I want to know this one because
I'd never heard of them, but I was looking through them because I was looking for fun facts and I was looking down through it and I was like, I wonder what is the most who's killed the most people, and that sounds really dark, but who's killed the most people, and that was the one on there that was the highest number. There's a couple on there that were in the around 30, but
I know some of the more notorious ones because I went to the museum that has a room on the different killers and has some artifacts from them. So it's Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, the clown one.
Yep.
Ed Gein, the Cauldron one. So there are a couple notorious ones, but I guess I never even thought about they only killed a couple people each.
Yeah.
It was very little. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know if fun is the best word to describe that fact or those facts, but interesting.
Fascinating.
Fascinating
there you
is
go.
a good word. Fascinating is a good word.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating in the worst way.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, my fun fact?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Okay. I chose this one because Mariah and I played softball together for a hot minute. For a couple years. I say a hot
Little
minute.
bit.
It was a couple years.
It was a while.
Um,
All of elementary school.
I know. Until you chose golf. But that's
You
okay
know.
because I eventually quit and chose band, so we're fine.
We're good.
So despite the fact that Alcatraz would never be mistaken for an opulent place by any means, convicts did have access to regular physical activities and really good food. The most popular sport in the rec yard was softball.
Ooh.
I like this fun fact goes to explain what softball is, but we know what softball is. So the teams were mixed, which led to racial problems and lots of fights. So on May 20th, 1956, tempers rose and a bunch of shanks were pulled. And so it was a very bloody game. And I think they ended up getting rid of like rec yard time after that, or like having the teams be segregated. But yeah, so bloody softball game.
A bunch
Fun.
of shanks.
Another not fun fact.
Not just one person carrying a shank, a bunch of shanks.
Like they all just pulled shanks on each other. Like all of a sudden.
Everybody had a shank. Like we're just
Yeah. So,
I don't know if this prison should get the reputation that it does for being such a good hardcore prison.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you want a fun fact though about softball prison games, I swear my dad, Dan, who Nikki almost wanted me to shout out at the beginning, so he's going to get one. In high school, they would take his team, like his baseball team, to go play pickup games against like the local prison like teams.
Nice. I didn't know that.
As part of their like rec time to like help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
no shanks.
It gets
ever.
them
no
practice too.
Yeah, it gets them practice, right? But like, yeah, they would have them like take turns in like the Babe Ruth leagues or whatever to go play the local prison teams in Iowa. So
that's cool.
Wow, what happens in Iowa?
It's just there's no rules there.
Yeah.
All right, I'll wrap it up with my fun fact. It's a little more lighthearted and a little bit different, but I think it's kind of topical because you talked about a long time to live in an attic. Would anyone like to guess the longest overdue library book that got returned? How many years it was? It's a world record.
96.
Is it recent?
Mid-90s.
Okay.
Or sorry, mid-1900s. That was a very poor description of mid-1900s.
Okay. 96 is a pretty
maybe it was returned after someone died, so maybe like 150 years.
288 years.
Holy crap.
That's like 3 generations.
Yep. It was checked out in 1668 and it got returned 288 years later in 1956.
That's not even 3. That's like 4 or 5 or 6 generations.
9 generations.
Yep.
I don't know why I said 30.
Yes.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, and I cannot pronounce the title of the book because it is in Latin because it was from the 1600s.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't charge a fine for it being overdue. Don't worry. So no one's family had to pay for it. But there's other examples of longest books that we might know a little bit more. So Darwin's a book on bug-eating flora was borrowed in 1889. It got returned in 2011.
I mean, that's
wild.
Yeah.
That's 130, almost 130 years.
Yeah.
120 something years.
Yep. Yeah. It's crazy. And these don't count as like books that got stolen during wars, etc. Like these are true like
somebody checked it out of the library
they
and
left in the
And
attic.
they finally and then finally got returned.
How do you decide that? How do you figure out that it was whoops, I forgot the book. And then decide to take it back.
I wonder if they had the same system. You know how there was like the stamp on the note card, or not note card, but it kind of looked like a note card on the inside of the book. And they used to stamp like in and out, or out and in.
Yeah.
So maybe there was an out, but never an in. And then someone was like, "Should this be returned?"
Yeah, but also at some point too, I wonder like. I mean, how often do you think this happened and the library closes before the book is returned?
I didn't even think about that.
I don't know.
Because And also, I've gone to libraries and bought books from the like they do the library sales that you can go buy the books for cheap. So, I don't know.
Well, the other aspect of this one, it was checked out from Sydney Sussex College in Cambridge, England, and it was borrowed by Colonel Robert Walpole. I don't know if I said it right, but who is considered to be the first Prime Minister of Great Britain. So they probably never really chased him to check it back in. So.
They should have.
That's funny.
They should have, and he was Prime Minister. They should have gotten that fine money. I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing, library? You should have made sure you got that fine money. But okay, well, I think that is it for this week, ladies. Mariah, thank you very much again for coming on.
Yes, thanks for having me. It was fun.
We hope you guys enjoyed this. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment. Let us know what you want us to talk about, because if you don't, we're just going to keep talking about what we want to talk about. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.